And I'm so happy to say that for the first time on our show, Tracee Ellis Ross joins me now. How are you?
I'm great. I loved your introduction. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you
that's
for having
that's
me.
all I have time for. I'm out now. That's it.
It's good. You don't need me.
Now,
That's good.
it's so nice to talk to you. Can you tell me a little bit about Grace Davis? Because I want to say that she's in the twilight of her career, but I don't even love that I think that. So tell me a little bit about Grace Davis.
It's so interesting. You also use the expression autumn, the autumn of
Yeah.
her life.
Yeah.
Um, you know, okay. Grace Davis is an international icon, music superstar who's had hit after hit, decades of hits. She's done it all. And she is at that phase in her career where those people around her and the world we live in, the culture and society we live in, has decided that she's at that place and that phase and that age where just rest on your laurels. You did it. There's no more dreams to have. Why take a risk? Play it safe. And what I loved about this movie, there were many things, but about this story, is that it was a story of two women on parallel journeys pushing up against what the world expects of them.
Mm.
And Grace Davis, particularly wanting to continue dreaming, continue becoming more of herself, and her record label thinking, let's send you to Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. I also loved that this was a story that sort of unpacked or allowed the humanity of someone that's larger than life to be present. I feel like so often in our world, these people that touch us so deeply through their art or through their creativity that change our lives, we imagine them as these otherworldly creatures that aren't human. And because I'm Diana Ross's daughter, I have this very close view where I know that they're human beings, and I love that Grace Davis had fears and hopes and secrets and insecurities, and that this movie kind of explored and shared them.
Well, there's two things I wanted on that. One is that I'll go to the second one you said. Not only are you Diana Ross's daughter, you were working with Dakota Johnson, who's Don Johnson's daughter and Melanie Griffith's daughter. And I wondered if you were able to, I thought about that in these roles were two people who know that these people who are treated as gods or treated as legends are people. Like, I wondered if you were able to connect on that, because you both have had a very rare upbringing.
Yeah, honestly, we didn't. It's such a funny thing. Like maybe it was such a given between us that it was not something we had to talk about.
Right.
The first time we met, we went to dinner together. And the only thing I can remember throughout our entire friendship now and during the movie is when we first met, before we started shooting, we went to dinner, and there was one moment where Dakota looked at me and she said, "Well, and I knew. And that was it.
Interesting.
That was it.
Interesting.
So I think, I can't speak for her, but I can speak for myself. It's a given in my life. It's not something that I know other than.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't lead with it. I don't say, hello, I'm Diana Ross's daughter.
No, I know.
It's like sort of, it is what it is. Some people know, some people don't, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. But I do think maybe I know for me, it was, as I said, one of the things that really drew me to the role. I loved the humanity of Grace Davis. She was so fun to be.
I don't want to keep talking about that, but it reminded me of, I talked to Ziggy Marley a couple of weeks ago. You met Ziggy Marley before?
No.
And I asked him, I said, so you got this book and movie coming out about your dad, Bob Marley. I said, he's like a god, and his people are wearing T-shirts of him all the time.
He's a god.
He's your dad, and he was like, yeah, he's my dad. And he said, I'll tweet out a picture of me eating fish, and people will write back, oh, Bob would never eat fish, and he was like, yes, he would. I know him. Like, he was a real guy. He had,
or like, no matter what picture I post, they're like, looking like your mama. And I'm like, I guess so. I mean, yes, I get, yes, just, but that's the beautiful part of it. I mean, I'm obsessed with my mom. I love her so much. And the Diana Ross that you guys know doesn't hold a candle to the mom that I have.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's all good. But it was interesting because, walking into this film, I was not thinking about it. I was thinking about the fact that I love this story. I love this character. I was excited that I got to sing for the first time. since we started the press, I was like, oh my God, everybody is like, did you play your mom? Is this your mom? I'm like, no.
Well, but I know, and I read the articles going into this, and it said like, one of the headlines was like, Tracee Ellis Ross confronts the inevitability of people comparing this role to Diana. But my God, I was thinking, all right, someone who had massive success and people are waiting for new music from, someone who is, your mom did a Vegas residency, like, I
think she's still in the process of it, except for the pandemic.
Yeah, it's hard to do a Vegas residency right now when you got about three people about 20 feet away from one another.
Exactly.
But it was, well, then let's not say it. Obviously, it wasn't on your mind, but I did find it interesting that it was your opportunity to sing and that you said that was something maybe because of your mom that wasn't always easy for you to do.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I sang in numerous talent shows as a child.
Numerous?
I always wanted numerous, maybe 3. And I actually, when I was going to school in Switzerland, and I sang Endless Love at a talent show with Placido Domingo's son. He sang the Lionel Richie part and I sang the mom part. And so I have always sang. I've always loved singing. I've known that I wanted to sing. I did it growing up. I did dabbled in it here and there. I sang the theme song for a television show I did at the beginning of my career that went like this. It's so funny. 'Cause I'm a TV girl. I live in your TV and I'm a TV girl.
I want someone to sample that so bad. That's all I want is for someone to tape that off the radio like it's 1983 and just make a hit out of it. Anyway, go on.
Unbelievable. Anyway, so, but I don't know where along the way, I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious, but it just kind of moved to the back burner. And I've gotten really busy and very successful. And I have a very full life. And I think the longer you wait to do something, the further it gets out of your reach, the scarier it gets. The older you get, the scarier it gets to try something new. And then the older, I think the reason it gets scarier is because the older you are, you know what the risk is.
Mm-hmm.
When you're young, you can try things and you're like, whatever. And I think I always imagined at a certain point, I mean, I'm 47. I'm in the spring of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think at some point I just sort of thought, oh, it's going to be, I'll do it in a musical on Broadway, or I'll do some musical film. But I had no idea that the film that was going to come along that I fell in love with was one where I was actually playing a superstar music icon. And so here it is. And this is what, it was an experience of unbridled joy and freedom for me. To face a fear and walk towards a dream was just exciting and fun.
But it takes time for any singer to find what their voice sounds like. I mean, you listen to like, I don't know why this is the example that's in my head, but you listen to like early Aerosmith and like, Steven Tyler sang us, there are times when I look in the mirror, really soft. And by the end of his career,
he's like, ah!
Yeah, he's just screaming love in an elevator. But it felt in this film that you had found it. So I wonder if you could talk to me a little bit about the process of having to find your voice to make this.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I think that was what was the most frightening for me, is having an expectation of what I wanted to sound like. The biggest treat of it all was to discover that I actually sound like myself. And you said that, what was it like finding my voice? The truth is that me, Tracee, I have found my voice as a human being. I know who I am. And I think that's one of the benefits and the beauty of being in the spring, in the autumn, whatever you want to say.
Oh, for God's sake, I cannot regret anything more.
But anyway, to be at this stage in my life, I really do have a relationship with myself and a sense of myself. So the truth is that my job in this experience was to get out of my way, to actually unencumber my voice and allow my truth to come out. And it was terrifying because I am a seasoned vet in what I do as an actor, but this is an area that I'm not seasoned. I don't have years and years of experience. And we had to do it in a very short amount of time. I'm used to doing that as an actor, to building a human being in a short amount of time, but I had to stretch into areas that I was really not comfortable with. Like I love being on a stage. Give me a live mic on a stage, I'm like, woohoo! But to sing into that live mic and not hide behind comedy was a bit of a stretch for me. And to do musical, dance numbers with it. Like, boy, I bowed down to Jennifer Lopez, Madonna, Janet Jackson, like all these people that do these dance combination situations while singing. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But also remember where your feet are going and you're like, what? But I think for me, what the process was getting comfortable and allowing myself to, like, reminding myself that Tracee's fear was not Grace's fear. So get out of the way.
If you're just tuning in, this is Q. I'm Tom Power. I'm speaking with Tracee Ellis Ross. The world now discovering that distinct voice in the new film, The High Note. And I am actually quite glad you caught to our autumn of the year comment on the way in, because it leads to a question I wanted to ask you, which is about this gendered notion of aging and success. And at one point in the film, Grace Davis says, in the history of music, only 5 women over 40 have had a #1 hit, and only one of them was Black. And in the larger context of phrases like twilight of her career, autumn of her life, autumn of her career, you don't hear that about Bruce Willis. You know, you don't, I don't know why that's the name that came to mind, but you don't hear that about men. What do you think this film says about how society treats famous women, in particular Black women, as they get older?
You know, I don't think it's just famous women. I think it is our world and society at large, and this sort of status quo, as if you get to a place in your life where you should stop dreaming, which I think is just garbage. You get to a place in your life where you are no longer considered sexy and juicy and joyful and wonderful. I think that this film, what I love is that it kind of touches on it with allowing the audience to have their point of view about it. Like, we don't make some big statement, but there's that one moment, and then you start to realize, oh, this entire thing has been telling this story, right? And that scene that precedes that is one of my favorites, because there she is sitting at the head of this beautiful, in this beautiful conference room with a table of men, most of whom are half her age, most of whose careers and the office that they are in was paid for by her success, her voice, and her work. And they are the ones that think that they are the arbiters of her life and what she should be doing and her choices. And I think that's a larger metaphor for what we are living in general. These ideas that somebody else should have jurisdiction over your body, over your mind, over your thoughts, over your dreams, over your choices. And I disagree. And I love that we were telling this story, and also looking at the sort of absurdity of it, particularly when you get to the end of the movie and you see sort of what blossoms from there.
In the film, Grace is unambiguously famous, and Maggie is this young woman who is an aspiring music producer. And I love this because I know some women music producers. I know I'm friends with a lot of them, and they have largely been looked over in the industry. They largely can't. I don't want to say they can't get in, because it implies that there's something wrong with them. They have not been afforded the same opportunities that men have to be, in particular in production of music. So can you talk to me a little bit about the relationship between your character and Maggie as a producer?
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting is both Maggie and Grace, as I was saying, are on this parallel path, right? So Maggie is this young, lovely woman who's smart, obviously very well versed in the history of music, has a real passion and a love for the art of music, and her boss, Grace Davis. But the assumption by the world, by the community, by the music industry, and in this movie, is that she should be getting them coffee. Like that's the role she should have. And so they go on this journey together, and without giving away the end of the movie, there is a discovery that they can actually be each other's ally, and it's one of the things I love about the movie, because it's not two women against each other. And Grace gets to name what is a fact, that there are so few female music producers in the industry, and that Grace, at this long point in her career, has never worked with one. And is that perhaps in juxtaposition to that conference room scene part of the reason that she has had to shut down the truth of her own voice? That in relationship with another female producer, she could be supported in continuing to dream and take risks.
If you're just joining us, my guest is Tracee Ellis Ross. I have sort of a acting technique-y question for you.
Yeah. Give it.
Okay, so you mean you're
Does it have to do with the autumn of my life?
It has the autumnal years. I'm just going to scratch out that line there I have there. So you're not unlike a fall season, is what I wanted to say. Your portrayal of Black women on the small screen has been really foundational for a really long time. You look at Joan Clayton in Girlfriends, Rainbow Johnson in Black-isg. However, through these characters, I feel like people, maybe you more than others, they feel like they know you through them as Tracee Ellis Ross. So technique-wise, how much of you, is that intentional? Like, how much of you do you put into these characters?
Well, I think that's a twofold question. One, I think that is to a certain extent my style of acting. One of the ways that I create is, I call it an unzipping, and I love to be honest.
An unzipping.
So an unzipping, like a sharing of, like open up your soul as opposed to putting a mask on top of you. And everybody creates differently in their acting experience. For me, particularly with television, when you take on a role is that it's going to go for a long time. And with the 2 shows that I've done, they've gone a long time. You know, when you're doing 173 episodes or you're going to go for 8 years, trying to play a character that is far from you is not the easiest, you know? And I don't know that that's why I do that, but it's been a blessing for me. However, I will say that Joan and Beau are not me at all. What I like to do is say, may that part of me known as. So that part of me known as Joan Carroll Clayton come forward through this role. May that part of me. So the places where not the experience of Joan's life or the experience of Beau Johnson's life, but the feelings in those experiences match up with mine. And so that's why I would imagine, I mean, you know, Grace Davis didn't feel like me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, there's elements and there's moments when you feel Tracee, because here's a secret. I'm playing all of these characters.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait. Can we stop the tape for a second?
Swear to God, just hold on to your pants and your socks.
Hold on. Okay? Right.
So it is me playing each of these women, which is crazy. So there's I look like them, like
sure, but I think the unzipping is interesting because I'm wondering if that's what it is. Like
it's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
does that make you more selective?
I don't know.
Like if it requires that vulnerability and obviously some kind of connection, does it make you more selective? I
mean, one of the things that I do is when I'm reading a script, I can always tell if it's something that I'm going to even be interested in if I start reading out loud while I'm reading. If I don't read out loud, it's usually not something that I have an authentic, energetic connection to. It doesn't always mean, when I read the script, it's going to be the one, but I can always tell if the voice starts to pull through my voice.
Interesting.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't bring a lot of science to my work.
Well, it's a very unscientific work, isn't it?
Well, for some people it's very scientific. I have a friend who, it's unbelievable what he maps out. I personally, for example, I don't like to over-rehearse, particularly not on Black-isg. And I don't like to make very big choices in advance, particularly with comedy, because my comedy is in tennis. It's in the response.
Right.
It's in the air in between the thoughts. So often, if I am too scientific about it, I actually rob that je ne sais quoi that happens in between moments.
I sometimes get a bit jealous. Now, mind you, I'm comparing my experience as a musician in Canada to your experience being in the biggest television shows of all time. But all the same,
no, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Sure. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. So when I remember I interviewed Deadmau5 recently. You know Deadmau5?
Yeah.
And he's like a mathy, computery guy. And he'll say it like, I come from maths, I come from programming, and but I took piano lessons. So I figured out how to kind of do that. And I was like, and I largely play improvisational music. People play fiddle tunes, and
what do you play?
I play the guitar mainly and the banjo.
Amazing.
So and what I typically do is someone will play a melody and I'll play behind them. So I'm trying to improvise behind them, and I've often been a bit jealous. Like, wouldn't it be nice if everything was if there was just logic to what I did, if it wasn't beholden to the emotions I was feeling that day, to the way I was feeling about this person? Wouldn't it be great if there was math?
Well, I will say, one of the things about my job is that even on my worst day, I have to be my best.
Yeah.
Even on my saddest day, I often have to be funny.
Wow.
So it's allowed me the freedom, in all honesty, to know that there is always a part of me that's okay.
Even on your bad days when you're not acting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I'm not acting.
But that's what I mean. It's there when you're not acting too. If you have a bad day on a Tuesday, there's a part of, I hear what you're saying, there's a part of you that can be okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah. I mean, it is, I discovered that in a way that, or in an experience that I wouldn't ever want to repeat, but it was a worthy sort of life opportunity moment. But yeah, and so there are days. I mean, it's so funny. I have this a conversation an ongoing conversation with an actress friend of mine that's so funny. We're always like, my God, can you imagine if there was a ticker tape underneath all of our scenes saying what was actually going on? like I was an hour late to work because my car broke down, or like my mom and I just got in a fight, or like
I ate too many bagels because craft service. Yeah.
I have the worst stomach ache ever. Like I actually am having a really depressed moment and cannot stop crying. I mean, like, can you imagine if people knew what was happening underneath? Sometimes it offers the most beautiful depth to a moment. It's one of the joys to me, the spontaneous joys of the job that I have. It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's, and everybody's different with it. I personally find it wonderful. I really do.
I mean, how are you doing anyway? I mean, it's an interesting time because
oh my God, it's an interesting time.
We're in the middle of a pandemic and also one of the largest protest movements in American history. I just about 30 seconds before I talked to you, I talked to Killer Mike from Run the Jewels, and we
yes.
and like, I mean, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm finding my way. Right now, it's been really interesting. The phase we're in right now is that, like, to a certain extent, the pandemic has become like the normal backdrop. Like, it's not like when it first started where it was just terrifying. Now it's like terrifying in a different way. And like, this is just what we're doing, right? You're just home. But yet life has kind of taken off again. I mean, I've been busy the entire time. For a while there, when the uprising and the movement, the sort of reignited itself, because obviously it's never ended. It's been here. I felt like I couldn't find my feet. I felt very wobbly, and I realized I couldn't find my feet because the foundation is shifting beneath us.
Yeah.
And that was an appropriate response. Now I feel like I've got my feet a little bit, but I'm not sure if my legs feel sturdy. They feel like a little bit sea legs, I find that the most helpful thing is remaining teachable and open, and really honoring what I'm feeling, and that's always the case. But I think now particularly, like, it is a very strange time. Like, it's a scary time. There's so much upheaval here in the United States. We're moving into an election period. Like, there's just so much happening. People, the unemployment rate is higher than it's ever been. It's disproportionately affecting people of color. We are confronted by, in a very real way, what has been happening around police brutality and the oppression of the system that we live in. There's so much of it, but it's like all here. I was saying to someone, it's like the Spanish flu, the Great Depression, and the Civil Rights era all in one moment, with social media.
So are you meditating or anything, or?
I do. I meditate. It's been harder to meditate. So right now, like, to actually do my sitting meditation has been challenging for me.
Yeah.
But what I've been able to do is really, really consciously give myself the space to do what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So to be present with what I'm doing, whatever that may be, which in and of itself allows me respite. This beautiful and glorious fiddle leaf fig behind me.
Look at that.
Yeah, she has brought me great joy, and tending to her, and then trying to get there's one outside my house, and I'm trying to get her to blossom the way this one is.
I wonder now if before we go, if you could do me a favor. I heard
Yeah,
this really lovely story about you and your mom, because this is you're singing in this film, and you have that song, "Love Myself," and I heard the story
yeah,
that you were in the car with your mom, who's Diana Ross, by the way, if people are just tuning in,
yeah,
and you played it for her. I wonder if you could tell me about it.
yeah. So my mom always knew I wanted to sing, and I mentioned that the Diana Ross you guys know doesn't hold a candle to the mom that I have. And one of the things that my mom does that's extremely special is she really allows her 5 children to find their way. I guess, my mom has lived her life out to such a full degree that she's not living through us. So she's really like this sort of big, loving, sunny container that kind of creates a big embrace around us. And so she's always known that I wanted to sing. And as a matter of fact, at 22, I remember my mom saying, it's time to record an album. And I was like, oh, okay. Um, Sure, mom. So I don't think I told her specifically what I was playing in this movie or anything, but I did tell her that I started to go into the studio and I was recording. I don't know that I tied all the pieces together, but when I finally felt like we were at a point where the demos, like we had tried like 7 or 8 different songs and I had little snippets all on my phone, right? And when I had finally gotten to that place, I was like, all right, I'm ready for my mom to hear. I'm ready to share my voice with my mom. So I called her and I was like, Mom, I'm ready. She was like, for what? What are we doing? And I was like, I'm ready to share my music with you. She was like, okay, when? And I was like, I want to pick you up. And she was like, okay, I'm dressed. Let's go. So I picked her up, put her in my car because, that listening to music in the car is fantastic. It's like full surround sound. You got the windows closed up. You're in an enclosed space. And so we sat in my mom's driveway, her in the passenger seat, me in the driver's seat. We were holding hands on the armrest between us. And, my mom has a lot of hair. And so when she's looking forward, you can't totally see her face or her eyes. So I couldn't see her face. And the first song I played was Love Myself, which is it's like a tonic for the times. I just love that song. It's so beautiful. It was one of the first songs I heard. And I played it for her and it ended. And then she sort of turned her head towards me with like tears just running down her face. And she was like squeezing my hand the whole time. And she said, finally.
Oh my God.
Finally.
Just
and
beautiful.
I was like, and then she was like, can I hear it again? I was like, yes, but there's more. So yeah, that was the moment I got to share my singing voice with my mom.
Well, I'm getting the note that I'm going to be, I think, taken out of here and thrown into the back of a truck for talking to you this long. But
no worries. This is such a wonderful conversation.
I love talking to you as well. Thank you so much for your time.
You are a treat. Thank you so much.